Hello everyone, it's me, Clayton. I just got out of seeing The Last Days of American Crime, directed by Olivier Megaton, and starring Anna Brewster, Charlton Copley, Edgar Ramirez, and Michael Pitt. This is basically the film I decided to review considering there aren't any other big film releases this week, and I can tell you that it's a film that's probably going to be a big waste of your time whether or not you're a fan of the original graphic novel that the film is based on. But let's get to the story, shall we? The story is that in the not-too-distant future, there's this signal that the government has created, known as the API, that can apparently stop any criminal activity dead in its tracks, which could essentially make America a country without crime. So, in the final days before this signal comes off, a career criminal named Graham Brick, played by Edgar Ramirez, winds up with his younger brother being dead, and he teams up with Kevin Cash, the son of a big gangster family, and a black market hacker named Shelby Dupree, played by Anna, as the three of them try to find a way to pull off a big crime to make themselves big money and get to the Canadian border before this API signal goes off and makes crime completely a thing of the past. Now, initially, even though it does seem far-fetched, the API thing does seem like it's an interesting concept when it comes to a crime thriller. It could bring up some legitimately good ideas on crime and what the future of law enforcement could be like. But unfortunately, this is directed by Olivier Megaton, who also directed the two sequels of the Taken films. So any interesting ideas that the films or that the graphic novel might have had that from this premise, any interesting ideas that come from it aren't really present here. Instead, you get a very conventional, very boilerplate crime thriller that only really has the API thing used as a gimmick. It very much reminds me of the missed opportunity of the first Purge movie, where it has a very interesting concept for a film, but it's only used as a backdrop for a very conventional home invasion film. And it's the same thing here. The characters are characters we've seen a million times before. The plot is recycled from almost every crime thriller of the last 10 years. And the biggest problem with the film is the fact that it is far, far, far too long. With a setup like this, you'd think 90 or 100 minutes would be all the film would need for a film story that really has everything spelled out in the first 30 minutes. Unfortunately, the film is bloated to 2 hours and 30 minutes, with so many scenes that are simply not needed, and most that are filled with either boring exposition or catchphrases that try to sound cool but mostly come across as cliched. Granted, the acting does try to make up for some of this, with Edgar Ramirez doing a pretty stoic and standard but still well done version of Brick, Michael Pitt trying his absolute best to inject some life into Kevin Cash, and Shelby Dupree is allowed to do some interesting action stuff as in her role, even if she also gets subjected to some more unsavory cliches of the crime thriller genre when it comes to how it handles female characters. But the actor who gets the most shortchanged of all is, I think, Charlton Copley. He basically plays this police officer who you'd think would have an integral part in the plot, but he doesn't. He's really just there to show up as a minor antagonist for our characters, and he doesn't really get used very well. Plus, they don't even let him play to his strengths and be that over the top. So it sort of feels like they only brought him in for name recognition, and that's about it. On top of that, the ending of the film, while it does have some satisfying action and it does at least finally make use of the premise of the film, it has some moments that are so unbelievable and an ending that's so unsatisfying that it'll make you feel like you wasted those last 2.5 hours. So this film is probably going to go the route of a lot of these films these Netflix films, where it'll be popular for a couple of days, but you'll probably never see it again after the first time, and you're probably just going to go back to Extraction or Tiger King when it comes to entertaining yourself during the pandemic. So that's why I'm going to give The Last Days of American Crime a 4 out of 10. Don't waste your time with this one.